I heard a little bit about Progress 8 and the impact that that's having on the number of schools who are off-rolling and excluding children, but I wondered what you thought was the main cause for this extremely high increase in the number of children entering alternative provision, whether you thought it was because of Progress 8, whether you thought it was because of the school culture, which you alluded to earlier, like the zero tolerance behaviour policies and the lack of flex that some school systems have, whether you thought it was the testing or the curriculum or the pressure, what you really thought the cause was for this huge increase in children being off-rolled and excluded. We'll start with you, Kevin.
I think it's all of those factors. I do think that the breakup of the system into academies and multi-academy trusts and local authority schools leads to an atomisation, and then that sometimes leads to institutions thinking about themselves as an institution more than the education service as a whole, and I think that underlies the EduData Lab, the Oxford Centre for High Performance. I do think that Progress 8 and many other accountability measures, you know that it's more time invested to get the same result from a child in challenging circumstances, and an easier thing to do is to remove the child if you're thinking about the institution instead of thinking about the child. So I do think that matters, but I think there are the wider factors that you touched on, and that I've touched on earlier as well. If we only focus on results, academic results, EBAC results, if that's the main focus, then that's what you get as your focus. You can't be surprised if schools concentrate on that, if that's what everybody tells them to concentrate on. And for some children who aren't feeling happy in that system, that can lead to all mental health problems, and that can lead to challenging behaviour, and I think that's part of it as well. But the funding cuts are also there. If you can put a team around the child, skilled teachers, skilled education social workers, somebody that can work with a child to think about their future, to think about, there might not be an academic path for you, but there might be an apprenticeship path for you, but somebody that will talk with a child to re-engage them, then I think that those things can be really successful.
I think it's worth noting that there isn't an even picture with regard to exclusions. So, yes, exclusions and off-rolling, and the same for off-rolling. That's not an even picture either. So, yes, exclusions have gone up, but they haven't gone up in every school. Some schools exclude very highly. Some schools, in very similar circumstances, don't exclude very much at all.
Yeah.
The fragmentation that we are seeing within some areas within the system, we do see that sometimes being a factor where schools are not in a strong relationship with each other, where they don't necessarily have a strong relationship within the local authority. That can be a factor because then there isn't that mutual challenge, that relationship to support each other. Yeah. So that can be a factor. In some areas we can see something of a vicious circle beginning to form with alternative provision, the PRUs being full, not being able to do any outreach, not being able to take any responsive placements to help support behaviour.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to repeat those educational reasons, but I think we can't lose sight of the fact that children are entering the classroom with more stresses and strains and more weight on their shoulders than ever before in terms of the circumstances they find themselves in terms of really difficult family situations and pressures that young people have. And that's happening at a time when we know school budgets are pushed. The support staff that previously were a really important feature of schools are starting to disappear. And we know local authorities aren't well placed to pick up that slack.